A national emergency is declared in the United States. But it doesn't have anything to do with the war in Afghanistan, the economic crisis, or nukes in Iran. Instead, it's H1N1, the swine flu. But is all this media hysteria really justified? And is the threat as dire as some would have us believe? Well, joining me to discuss this and other burning issues, both here in the U.S. and abroad, Congressman Ron Paul. Thank you so much for speaking with me. So you have called this whole vaccination program a failure. Why?
Well, they have failed to get the vaccine to the people that need it. They've been working on it for months and months. They've spent a couple $2 billion. And I have several physicians in my family, and they don't have any vaccine in their office. So even if they wanted to give it, they don't have it. And so it just demonstrates when governments decide to do something, that they're pretty inept at doing it, even though a lot of money was spent. And yet the American people are indicating they want the federal government to take over medical care. But if they can't even deliver a vaccine, I don't see how they can deliver medical care to everybody any more efficiently.
You have questioned before why Barack Obama doesn't get his own children vaccinated, and just recently we found out that he in fact had Sasha and Malia get the shot. Do you think that this was a response at all to what you might have said?
I don't know the exact sequence. I know when I did it, I obviously believed he hadn't, because he had announced in a press conference, oh no, they had not had a shot. But I thought he probably figured it was in their best interest politically to do it. But isn't that sort of sad? That if he deep down in his heart didn't want his kids to have it, that he was willing to do this. Of course, the analogy I made there was, so many of our presidents, Republicans or Democrats, always push government education. At the same time, our presidents don't send their kids to public school here in D.C. So they talk big and they're going to take care of everybody, but they want special treatment for their own children.
You talk about having the freedom of choice when it comes to this. We've seen rallies in New York where doctors or nurses were saying, we don't want this to be mandatory. Do you think that Americans will ever come to a point where they will have to get this vaccine? It won't be an option anymore?
Of course, what a lot of Americans are fearful of, that's what I'm fearful of. I don't want to do away with the vaccines. I do think that we give too many vaccines and we can overdo it. But I want these choices to be made by patients and doctors, not by government. And the fact that New York is forcing government employees, it might be a sign of the time. If it's not reversed, if the American people go along with it, that's what's going to happen. And these emergency powers that were declared, they can actually, quarantine people in large numbers and say, you either do it or not, else we'll put you here and we'll inoculate everybody. That is hardly the way I want to accomplish and solve our problems.
You're a doctor. Critics of the vaccine itself are coming out and saying that in the long run, it's actually going to do more harm than good. Do you agree with this?
I think it can do damage, and some children can be affected. It is a live virus. It's attenuated. It's not supposed to be as virulent. But yes, there are rare cases of people dying from reaction to medication. And if this flu is not so serious, which it doesn't sound to be, they were yelling and screaming about 1,000 deaths. Well, regular flu kills many, many more than that every year, and nobody gets all up in arms about it. And this whole idea of working so hard on this one vaccine actually made shortages in the other vaccine as well. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
There seems to be so much media uproar regarding this issue, perhaps even taking precedence over other burning issues, particularly when it comes to foreign policy and the situation in Afghanistan, because the real crisis seems to be occurring within the White House, that debate, send more troops or change the military strategy completely. What are your thoughts on this?
My first thought is, aren't they a little bit late? This is the good war, and we've only been there 8 years, and now we have the war, now we have the fighting, now we're looking for the reason. Why are we in there? What are we doing? What's the results? What's the end point? I think they have it turned around. That's why I argue for the case that when we go to war, it should be very, very precise and very, very deliberate under a precise vote of declaration and knowing what the Congress wants and what the people want and stand up for it. But when we go to war under UN resolutions or under NATO or because it feels good to us or we're doing this to promote democracy, it's vague, it's political, there's no end point, and there's no precise enemy. And therefore, they keep fighting, and we go into these countries and we become occupiers. The people who live there resent it, and they start fighting us. So we call them terrorists. Well, they're terrorists there. They're bad people. We have to send more troops in. And citizens, die from these bombing raids. They're even dying in Pakistan. All that does is incite more people to resent what we're doing. So it's a cycle. And here we are at a point of a cycle where a few people are questioning it. Do we really need more? And, of course, the military wants more, and Obama probably is honestly in a box because he supports the war. He supported it during the campaign, and the military wants more troops, but a lot of Americans don't, especially the Democratic base. So he has a dilemma. So it'd be much better to have a precise position, non-intervention. You know what you're supposed to do. Just stay out of those places.
I'm glad you mentioned Pakistan. It's becoming more and more crucial in this fight. We've seen violence increasing. What is the future going to hold?
More chaos and more killing and more resentment toward Americans. And, there's a big fuss because we just voted more foreign aid, and rightfully so. The civilian population sees that as more control, and the Pakistanis have fought frequently internally over civilian control versus military control. The last thing that we need is us being involved there. But our policy in Afghanistan has spilled over because some of the people we were trying to kill in Afghanistan have gone into Pakistan. So there's much more violence there, and I think the resentment will be toward us. It just doesn't look like there's an easy end to this unless they change overall policy. And, of course, that's what I've advocated all along, changing overall policy.
Now, switching gears to Iran, do you think that the United States, in this case, is justified to pressure Iran to give up its nuclear program?
I think we're completely wrong, because so far our own intelligence report, NIE, in 2007 said that they haven't been trying to do anything since 2003. And they're allowed to have enrichment for peaceful purposes. And the United Nations has never written a sanction against the Iranians for breaking the NPT treaty. They've never been accused of that. So, and the new place in Guam is, they reported that, and they said the IAEA can come in and inspect it. So, and we're about to put on more sanctions. We had that going up in our committee today, and they want to prohibit anybody from delivering gasoline. So we're going to punish the people of Iran, and the people aren't going to get mad at their ayatollahs and their radicals. They're going to get mad at us, and they're going to solidify behind their radical leadership. So it backfires on us, and it really helps China, because China will probably go in, sell them oil, develop their oil, and they'll have more influence there because they're pretty good capitalists these days. And here we are using aggression to try to control what's happening in Iran. Our policy makes no sense.
I mean, even so, some experts are hinting that a military strike might even be possible, that perhaps the United States and Israel are training, might be getting ready to strike Iran militarily. What do you think about this? Is this an option?
Let's hope not. I know some people go for the sanctions. They go for the sanctions believing that is, something better than going to war. But sanctions are an act of war. The point I made in the committee today, I said, what would we think if somebody said we can't import any oil? We'd be furious. And it would be an act of war. We wouldn't put up with it one bit. So, it is an act of war. It encourages even more effort by the Chinese to come in there and help the Iranians both drill for oil and to refine their oil. And also it gives a real boom to the black market. And the people will suffer. The privileged will benefit, and American foreign policy will suffer another consequence.